What is up? Welcome into Tuesday, April the 27th edition of Roughing the Kicker, a daily Kansas City Chiefs podcast on arrowheadreport.com. I am your host, Tucker Franklin, and joining me today, I love my conversations with him. It's former NFL head coach Jim Mora Jr. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing really well, especially after the news of Orlando Brown Jr. coming to Kansas City. Now, this is some trade. I talked about this on yesterday's podcast. This was a trade I feel like we've been talking about for so long. Like after the Super Bowl, it'd be like, well, wouldn't it be nice if the Chiefs traded for Orlando Brown? You know, kind of after he said, well, I want to go to left tackle, and they already have a really premier left tackle there. So it's something like, okay, maybe the Chiefs can swoop in. But what were your thoughts on the deal?
Well, I thought it was a great move by Kansas City to get an established veteran, top of the line performer. It's what we all know that they needed. You know, we knew they needed to address our offensive line, and they got a guy that's established. You know, you go into the draft with the thought you may get a guy, but where they're picking, you know, I don't know what the value was going to be. And so they assessed their situation and what it was going to cost them to get the premier offensive tackle that they can now put at left tackle, and they pulled the trigger. And I was surprised that someone would part with a guy like Orlando, but you know, I think it was a unique situation that he aspired to play left tackle. So great move by the Chiefs. It opens up a lot of possibilities for them. I'm sure Patrick Mahomes smiled very widely when he heard the news, and will be very welcoming of this trade.
It's a very interesting scenario, as you mentioned, for the Ravens, because not only did Brown play left tackle for them last year, I believe it was 11 games, but then they fill in with another Pro Bowl left tackle at the Ravens too, and they've been talking to different tackles. Alejandro Villanueva being one of them for the Ravens. So it looks like they're going to be fine on the offensive line. Doesn't look like they cut too many ties there. But I'm curious from your point of view. It seems odd to me that the Ravens would trade him to the Chiefs, right? Because this is the Chiefs' biggest deficit would have been left tackle. And they traded him to the Chiefs, Orlando Brown, who's the Ravens' biggest competition for the AFC. Do you think that played into it at all? Or I always thought that was kind of odd.
No, I mean, I think your perspective is right. But I'll tell you this, in when someone plays for you, you know them a little bit more intimately than, you know, somebody that desires to have them play for them. Like the Chiefs' desire for Orlando is for a different reason than Baltimore would get rid of him. You know, Baltimore may not value him the way, well, they obviously don't value him the way the Chiefs value him. They see different opportunities presenting themselves in terms of free agency, potential draft picks. They've got a solid left tackle. There's money concerns. And really, you just have to find a dance partner in the draft. And, you know, it's not always going to be a perfect situation when you're trading a guy. But if you're looking to, you know, add draft picks to your team, or cut your salary cap, or give a younger player an opportunity to play, any of those reasons and several others, you know, that's the reason to make a trade. So, you know, it doesn't always make sense, you know, to us on the outside. God, why would they trade him to a team that they're competing with to try to get to the Super Bowl and win a world championship? But I can tell you this, neither team would make the trade unless it really made sense to that team. And so, you know, Kansas City found a partner in Baltimore. Baltimore found a partner in Kansas City, and they made it what they both believe is a good deal for their franchise.
So really, when you look at this trade, I think it's interesting. The Ravens are going with the futures game. They're going with the draft picks. Chiefs are going with the proven player. When you were captaining an NFL team, would you like the proven commodity a little bit more than the draft picks, or what did you kind of like?
Well, I mean, I think you always like the proven commodity, but you know, being in the intrigue of the unknown, and then the excitement of the new player through the draft is sometimes hard to overcome, but it doesn't necessarily seem as exciting when you get a guy that's a known commodity as drafting someone that you're betting on the potential. But I think if you ask most NFL head coaches, they need to win, and they need to win now, you know. And now listen, Harbaugh and Andy are two guys that are in no trouble, and they'd have to lose for a lot of years to even be thought of in trouble. I mean, you know, Andy's going to the Hall of Fame. And Harbaugh, you know, his tenure there is so well established. So, they both could endure taking a young guy, betting on him, and survive. But it's just different approaches, different philosophies. And there's so many things that you and I will never know that go into this trade. So many backroom discussions between coaches, between, your director of player personnel, your general manager, your owner, your president. But like I said, at the end of the day, if it makes sense to both teams, and it'll make sense for completely different reasons sometimes, then you make the trade.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And when you look at the scheme of Baltimore and Kansas City, this is something I've brought up. Not that I'm saying it won't happen. I just think it should be cautious of the schemes are completely different in Baltimore and Kansas City. Kansas City very pass heavy, Baltimore pretty run heavy. And not only that scheme, but he's now flipping from the right tackle to left tackle. He did play left tackle there 11 games, but he's in the big leagues. He's been a right tackle. He did play left tackle at Oklahoma, protected the blind side of Baker and everything like that. So do you think it'll be a tough switch for him to go back to left tackle?
No. And I think that if the Chiefs didn't have conviction that he could slide in at left tackle and be a Pro Bowl performer like he's been at right, that they wouldn't have made this move. They've seen film, they've played against him, they evaluated him coming out of college. They have all the information that they need. They've seen him play at the highest level against the best competition. They got the 11 games, as you said, to evaluate him at left tackle. I wouldn't be concerned about scheme. I wouldn't be concerned about, going from a run heavy offense to a pass heavy offense. He has the skill set to play at a very high level. He's proven that. And so, it's just, it doesn't matter to him necessarily what play is called. He's just going to go execute his responsibility. He's fundamentally sound. He's talented. He's eager to get a fresh start. And I think it's just a great move for the Chiefs. I don't think there's really any downside, in my opinion.
Love that. Yeah. So when the trade first came out, a little worried the Chiefs were going to overpay for compensation, but looking at it, getting the extra second round pick back, I think was really big for Kansas City. So now when we look at the draft, they've got pick 58 and 63. That'll be on Friday. They don't have a Thursday pick. I get to kick my feet up on Thursday now. I get to relax a little bit. Don't get to have to worry about what they're going to pick at 31.
What if they package those two second round picks and move up into the first round because they see somebody that they like? So you better stay sharp, because I can guarantee you the Chiefs aren't kicking their feet up. They're going, okay, listen, now we've got, what do they have? What'd you say, 58 and 63? Or
Yep.
So they may go, well, if we take 58 and 63 and we can move into the 20s and get someone that we really love. So don't kick your feet up too high. Keep that TV turned on.
There you go. That's a good point. I probably should have thought about that, because, Rashad Bateman's a guy that could be there in the 20s. It could be pretty explosive in this Chiefs offense. I know you and I have kind of talked about Bateman a little bit. So now with the tackle, the biggest issue solved, Brett Veach doesn't like to go into the draft with some pretty glaring holes. We kind of saw that with the Frank Clark trade a couple of years ago. They don't really have any glaring holes now going into the draft. Now, wide receiver still a need, edge is still a need. Do you think if you're Brett Veach, you can kind of take a bigger of a deep breath, can kind of go in this best player available type mindset now?
Without a doubt. When you're a team that doesn't have a lot of holes to fill, then it opens up a ton of options for you in the draft. And, you can sit there and you can, wait to see who's probably going to be available when you pick. And you can say, okay, let's line these guys up on our board, how we have them ranked and by position, and where does need fit best available. And I mean, they still have needs, but you can focus more on, hey, this is the best available player. He fits our scheme. He fits our culture. He fits who we want to be. There's no character issues. He's a really great pick at this point. He's going to develop into an excellent player for us in time. Let's take him. And so I think it does take some pressure off you. But, there's a reason the Chiefs are such a great organization, a great team, is they've got great players and they've got people making great decisions at the highest level. So they've earned the right to be in this position. You think about it. Would you for Orlando, would you have drafted Orlando Brown in the first round if you were the Kansas City Chiefs? Yeah. So that's your first round pick, and you picked up an extra second. That's a heck of a deal.
Yeah. And the more I think about it, at first when it was reported, it was like, oh no, we don't know any of the compensation. All we know is the Chiefs got Orlando Brown, which to some people that was enough. That was enough for rejoicing. And so that hole was plugged. And then once we saw they got the second round back, I said, okay, that's pretty solid. But you make a really good point about trading up, because Brett Veach, notoriously aggressive. He's one of only two GMs never to trade back. Him and Dave Gettleman have never traded back in the NFL. So I could see that definitely being a possibility, especially if the Chiefs really like someone on day one, say wide receiver, maybe even an edge, a Jalen Phillips, Gregory Rousseau, some guys that would have been gone before 31. Now they've got a pretty decent package to trade up. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it's always a possibility, but once again, they have to find a dance partner,
right,
and you mentioned a guy like Jalen Phillips. A lot of teams are interested in Jalen Phillips or Rousseau, and if they have the chance to take him, I'm not sure that they're gonna. I think that the Chiefs would have to make it very, very enticing for a team to move out. But I do think it's a possibility. If a team's sitting there and they don't have someone that they just are in love with at a pick in the mid to late 20s, they don't have someone that's like, God, we covet this guy, but they have some guys in that 58 to 60 range. They say, man, if we could get two of those versus one guy that we're not in love with, then there's a chance of that happening. But that's ifs, ands, or buts. I mean, who knows exactly what every team's thinking, and we'll find out. We'll find out Thursday night if the Chiefs take a chance and move up. But maybe the Chiefs are sitting there and go, why would we trade up unless there's someone that we really, really, really covet? And we can sit here at 58 and 63 and get two really good players that are going to help our team continue to operate at the highest level.
That's a really good point. The Chiefs could just want the two, unproven commodities yet and still try to grow them, mold them into their offense. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, that's why the draft's intriguing, because it's so fluid. We never know until Roger Goodell stands up there and announces the pick, what's going on the phones, what's going on in the back rooms, what teams are really thinking. And it's, you think it's going to unfold a certain way, but it just never does unfold that way. And that's why people tune in and watch it. It's unpredictable. And I've said this, it's like this amoeba, it's just changing its shape always. And a team makes a pick, and that affects the rest of the draft. And then someone, reaches for somebody, or we say they reach for somebody, they don't think they're reaching for somebody, or somebody gets left on the board, and it just changes the complexion of the draft. That's why I like to watch it. You think about sitting there for 3 hours and just watching names get called off a board, it would be pretty boring. But when you're passionate about a team, all right, and that there's going to be some intrigue, it's kind of a dramatic, slow-moving movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. And I think this draft is going to have more intrigue than really any other draft in years past, just because, we kind of know what 1 and 2 are. Maybe 2 is a little bit more up in the air now with Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, all those quarterbacks. After that, it's a crapshoot, essentially. Nobody really knows what's going to happen. I think I'm really excited for that part.
Yeah, me too.
So, Coach, I appreciate you joining me on today's Roughing the Kicker. I appreciate you joining us on those 2 previous episodes as well. It's been a wonderful time having conversations with you, Coach. So I hope all is well where you are, and I hope you continue to have good health wherever you are, and you can be safe.
Thank you, buddy. Look forward to talking to you again sometime. You take care. Good luck.
That'll do it for today's Roughing the Kicker on arrowheadreport.com. I am your host, Tucker Franklin. Thank you for joining Coach Jim Mora and I. You can follow me on Twitter at Tucker D. Franklin. Stay up to date with the show. Make sure to subscribe, like this video on YouTube. Go leave us a 5-star review on iTunes if you're listening to the podcast on iTunes. Make sure to follow us on whatever podcast platform you are listening on. Tomorrow, I'll be back with Jordan Foote. We're going to be doing our mock draft 12.0, our last one before the first round of the NFL draft. So until then, I'll talk to you tomorrow.